Welcome back to another episode of ACC Basics. In this series we're going over the basics of ACC and sim racing stuff in general, so subscribe if you don't want to miss a thing. In this episode we're going to be talking about the rules on track, racing etiquette and the penalties of Assetto Corsa Competizione. A lot to cover, so let's just jump into it. Racing flags are up first. Besides making the track nice and festive, you gotta know what they mean, so you can behave like a proper gent. The yellow flag means an accident has happened, or someone went off track and you need to be cautious. Whenever I see a yellow flag, I do a quick check on the map to see if anyone is standing still on the track and if I need to be careful. The white flag means that there's a slow car ahead. Oftentimes this happens right after a yellow flag and you still need to watch out. The green flag means there was a yellow flag, but the driver has gone to the pits or is back on track at a steady pace and the problem has resolved itself. The blue flag means you gotta give way to faster drivers. There's a driver coming behind you that's at least one lap ahead of you. It's proper etiquette to go off the racing line and let him pass, which brings me to my next point. Overtaking properly is something else than dive bombing someone and hoping they get out of the way. That is just bad sportsmanship. The first thing you gotta know is when to abort overtaking. If you're gonna cut someone off by overtaking them just before a corner, you generally shouldn't go for it. They're probably focused on the racing line and don't expect you to come in between them and the apex. The official rules state that you should abort such an overtake attempt if the front of your car is behind the middle of the other driver's car. In my opinion, there's a variety of overtaking opportunities. The first one is when someone gets on the brakes too early, you can pass them. Don't confuse this with dive bombing someone, and only pass someone in a corner when they're slower and there's enough room. Otherwise, you're putting yourself, the slower driver, and the rest of the racers in danger. The second overtaking opportunity is when you're right behind someone in the corner, but your exit speed is greater. You can safely overtake them on the straight afterwards. And the third overtaking opportunity is when you're alongside another driver and force them to brake to make the corner properly. This requires respect from both drivers. My general rule of thumb is, if you don't trust the other driver, be the first one to slow down. Crashing is a lot more time consuming than slowing down a tiny bit. Besides there being rules for overtaking, there's also rules to defending your position. When you see someone coming up behind you, you're supposed to pick a racing line, just like you normally would. On every straight you can make one move off of that racing line to defend your position, and then you should stick with it. Otherwise, you're just zigzagging on the straight to not let someone pass, and that's just rude and dangerous. The game won't punish you for it, but people will lose respect for you, and they'll remember you. Just be assertive without being a jerk. And if you have any tips or opinions of your own on this one, don't hog them. Leave them in the comments down below and educate the rest of us. The sequence at the start of an online race isn't really that complicated, but I regularly see folks with drive-through penalties because they ignored it. So here's what you gotta do. When you're in the double file configuration, stay on your side of the track. The game will tell you if you're not doing a good job. Watch the white rectangle and keep it in the green zone until the max speed bar pops up. Here you gotta watch your max speed until the green light. Not complying with the game's instructions for too long will result in a drive-through penalty. Which brings me to my last topic, the penalties. There's a variety of penalties in ACC, and these won't all be the same for every server you race on, but generally they work as I'll explain them. The first one is collisions with another driver. These will result in safety rating penalties. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. In most cases you can put yourself in a safe position where you can avoid reckless driving by watching your rear view mirror and watching up ahead, of course. Most of the times this comes at the cost of a little speed, but again, crashing costs way more time than safe driving. Most of the time you'll get a warning when you go off track or cut a corner, when you go outside of the track limits and gain lap time. That's when you'll get a warning. Oftentimes 3 warnings result in a drive-through penalty. If you go off track limits and lose time because of it, you won't get a warning. So if you cut a corner on accident, slow down a bit and get on with your race, because drive-throughs are way worse than losing about 5 seconds. Usually you'll get a drive-through because you got too many warnings, either by exceeding the track limits or cutting corners. When you don't comply with the start of the race sequence, you'll also get a drive-through penalty. You get an X amount of laps to drive through the pits, or you'll get a post-race time penalty. Watch your speed when you're entering the pits. You have a pit limiter, so use it, or you'll get a stop and go penalty for speeding in the pits. The stop and go penalty ranges from 10 to 30 seconds. You'll get the stop and go penalty whenever you're cutting a corner and gain a huge advantage or go faster than 50 kilometers an hour in the pits. You'll need to drive into the pits, park it in your designated spot. Your controls will be locked for the penalty time. Your crew won't repair your car during the penalty. When the timer runs out, you'll gain control of your car again and you're free to get back on track. The post-race time penalties, you get these when you ignore a drive-through or a stop-and-go penalty. These are not to be laughed at. I've seen drivers that got about 80 seconds on top of their time, and it set them back a huge number of places. And that's about it. That's the penalties and the rest of the rules. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you got any opinions of your own, suggestions for other video topics, leave those all in the comments down below. I'll read it all. If this video was helpful, leave a hearty like. If you don't want to miss anything, be sure to subscribe. See you later, boys. Keep it tasty, keep it tight, and don't be afraid at night. I love you.